Hello, I'm so happy to see you. Today I'm going to be working on the second snowflake in my series. The colors that I've chosen for today are this sort of pale aqua and light pink. My plan is to fill my entire cloth with different snowflakes, and each one of them is going to be different than the others, just as actual snowflakes are all different from each other. It always feels easier for me if I've got some things pinned down, and then I can make other decisions within a box. I'm going to work within a box of my own making. The parameters or the guidelines that I'm going to be using for this project, and these are entirely invented by me and are subject to change on a whim. Each of my snowflakes is going to have this celery, yellowy, beigey color thread to start with, and it's going to have two other colors of sort of pale, washed out pastel colors as well. So they're all going to have 6 spokes coming out from a central point. For that first snowflake, I used a limited number of stitches, some really simple stitches that I know quite well. So what were they? I used chain stitch, fly stitch, running stitch, and I used pistol stitch. I think that's all. Yes, I think that's all. So my plan is to use variations of those stitches in each of my snowflakes and see how differently I can make these things come out. Now, initially I thought I was going to be limiting the amount of time that I spend on these, but I decided that I don't want to do that. That was not feeling comfortable to me. So, there's an example of how my plans have already changed from when I started to now, day 2. So I started out making those fly stitches around in a circle that made kind of a star shape. But I secured those fly stitches with the pistol stitch. And I thought about how I might approach this because I like to think about what I'm doing as I work on these and do problem solving as I go along. And what I decided to do is to work around in a circle, which is different than the way that I started the snowflake yesterday. I need to have 6 of these stitches going around in the circle to meet back up at the beginning. So the first 3 will be the first half of the circle. And then the second half of the circle, all I had to do was line up the next stitch with the one that's going to be directly opposite it. So right now, the stitch that I'm doing right now is going to align with that one at the top. And if I do this, I should be able to get all the way around and have something that's, fairly regular. It's not perfect by any means. It's not exact because I've not gotten any markings on this cloth intentionally. I know that I could use some chalk or something to draw out some guidelines, but I really don't want to. I want to learn to trust my intuition without using some external guides. This way, I'm training my eye to see shapes and to know where to go without any outside guidance. It's my own intuition, my own eye, and my own hands that are creating the shapes. And are they going to be a little bit wonky? Absolutely. Does it matter? Absolutely not. And now I'm using up the last of my thread here by creating a straight stitch. Oh, that's the other stitch that I use, those little straight stitches. I'm going to be playing that little game of yarn chicken again. I don't know why I always do this. It's just a short little bit of thread. Would it really matter if I didn't use it? Would it be a waste? I don't think so, but I find it amusing to see if I can squeeze out every last bit of thread before I move on to the next thing. And there you go. That worked. I got all the way around. And then again, that is part of that learning to trust my intuition, looking at how much thread do I have and am I going to make it around? And sometimes I guess wrong and sometimes I guess right. And now I've changed to the aqua color thread and I'm doing chain stitches towards the middle of the circle. And again, I made that first decision that I'm starting off with a chain stitch going towards the middle of the circle, which is going to create kind of a little nubbly bit right in the middle of the circle there. And as I've said before, all I have to do here is make one decision. So the decision to make a chain stitch that points towards the middle of the circle with the securing stitch right in the middle, and then repeat that all the way around. So I do that 5 more times and I get back to the beginning, and that's all I have to do until it's time to make the next decision. And then I just make one decision again, whatever that's going to be. Perhaps I'll change the thread color or see if I can finish off what I have left of this color. And I'm making calculations. Do I have a lot of thread left so I can do something elaborate towards the outside of the circle? Or should I choose something that's simple that I can do near the middle of the circles so that I don't run out of thread? Or should I just start with a new thread and not worry about how much I still have to go? So my next move is to create fly stitches that use those little straight stitches that I've already put in. They're conveniently become the anchoring stitches for these fly stitches that I'm making here. So I'm just making those by going through the straight stitch at the bottom. So normally when you're doing a fly stitch, you create that securing stitch as you're making the loop, but I'm doing it in the backwards order here. And while I'm working on the stitch, I might be thinking about what comes next, what I want to do next or not, and we'll see. And now I'll look at how much thread do I have left, and I have a fair bit, so I feel like I've got enough to add some chain stitches. So I'm actually doing the chain stitches around the French knot at the end of those pistol stitches. So the French knot is going to be inside the chain stitch. That was kind of an interesting decision. It was kind of a last minute choice. It's not something that I've ever done before, but I kind of like the way it looks. It's kind of reminding me of a peacock feather, the end of a peacock feather a bit. I kind of like that. I had a question from somebody on one of my previous YouTube videos about which cloth is best to use for slow stitching projects, and that's an interesting question because I don't think that there's really a best cloth. This isn't really about using the best thing. It's about using whatever you have. So I think that the answer to that question would be the best thing to use would be something that you already have rather than going out and trying to purchase something that is the same as what I have. So and I didn't know whether this person had stuff, but their next comment really made it clear that they have more than enough stuff to choose from. They said that they were going to go through their cloths. Well, you know, here's another thing. Going through your cloths sometimes can mean becoming overwhelmed. So I often think just grab the first thing you see and start. If I were to now decide I wanted to do snowflakes, I might go and look at my cloth and just pull out the first thing. Maybe it would be a piece of denim, maybe it would be some white or light colored cloth, in which case I would use bright or dark colors on it, and perhaps they would look a little bit more like flowers, but you could absolutely do the same thing in a different way. And that's what makes things interesting, not necessarily copying exactly what I'm doing to try to get a similar or the same result, but thinking about how can you make this your own project and how can you put your own spin on it. So maybe you're not in a place where it's feeling wintry right now and you'd rather do something that feels more summery. You could absolutely do these. These could be very abstract, interesting looking floral designs, don't you think? Or what are those things called? Fireworks? No, that's not what I was thinking about. I didn't actually mean to say fireworks, but you know, these could be really great fireworks worked on a light colored cloth with some really interesting fiery colors. But I was thinking dandelion clocks or other really lacy, delicate flowers. These could make really beautiful kind of imaginary flowers even. Or they could even just be abstract mandalas where you don't have any representational things in mind. You're just creating shapes that you enjoy, that make you feel happy. And my snowflake is building up. The thing that I always find interesting about doing things like this, where things build up, when you start, it doesn't really look like much. It looks a little bit ragged and not very interesting, but the more I add, the more interesting these become, and the less you notice the imperfections. So I feel like it's like a community of stitches all working together to create something more beautiful than any individual one on its own. And as usual, I just make one decision at a time. And now I've brought in that third color, the pink, as well. So that's a little bit more variation. And I know that it doesn't really show up on the camera, which is a good thing. I didn't want the colors to be the main emphasis here. I wanted the colors to be sort of a subtle look. So if you think about when you're looking into ice or into snow, it's white, it's one color, but really there are so many colors and little variations of color depending on how the light is hitting the snow, and that's kind of the look that I'm hoping to achieve here. I already mentioned how this type of stitching would look really different if you use different colors of background fabric and thread. You could create things like fireworks on a really dark background with bright colored thread, or you could create a garden of flowers on a lighter background. There's so many different options. It could be even really interesting to use metallic colors. If you have metallic threads, wouldn't those look gorgeous on a dark background? What would you do if you were creating stitches like this around in a circle? Do you have any ideas for what you might create? And now, to finish up my pink thread there, I'm creating fly stitches that go around the pistol stitch, and I tell you, I'm really enjoying this way of working, of using the stitches that are already there and adding to them rather than introducing new stitches, and sort of creating my own combination stitches. I've been doing this thing this year called Take a Stitch Tuesday, where you get a new embroidery stitch each week to practice, to work on. So Take a Stitch Tuesday is run through a website that you sign up for. It's free, and at the beginning of the year they start out by sending you an email each week with a link to a suggested stitch, and that continues throughout the year. And at the end of the year, those all get deleted. I thought I was done, but did you notice it? Did you see it earlier? I didn't. And then it leapt out at me. I forgot one of those pistol stitches. So I've threaded up my needle again with pink thread, and I'm going to go back in and add that last pistol stitch. And then, because I've still got thread on my needle, I'm going to do more, because that's how I am. I can't not. But anyway, getting back to Take a Stitch Tuesday, there'll be a new Take a Stitch Tuesday series starting up in January 2024, and you can sign up for free on the Pintangle website. I will put a link in the description box for this video, but it's also on the screen here. And I've really enjoyed it this year, so if that's something that might interest you, learning a huge variety of different stitches, then I would recommend signing up for that. So what do you think? What would you make if you were going to do some embroidery around in a circle like this? What do you think it reminds you of? There are no right or wrong answers. Whatever you want to do, whatever you see, is exactly what it should be. Well, I have an idea formulating in my head, but perhaps I'll save that for the next videos. So when you see the next video coming up, there'll likely be an invitation attached to it, but I'll keep that a little bit of a secret for now. But get your thinking caps on and think about what you might want to create. And that's it for this snowflake. I hope you've enjoyed it and that I will see you again soon. Bye for now.